My name's Fred Dawson, and at 70 years old, I've lived long enough to know that life doesn't break you all at once. It breaks you in pieces, quiet ones you don't even notice slipping away until suddenly you realize you're standing in the middle of a life you no longer recognize. This is the story of how I lost myself, how my family fell apart, and how, against all odds, little by little, we found our way back. If you ever loved someone so deeply that they felt stitched into your bones, then you know what losing them feels like. Your body keeps walking, talking, breathing, but the world behind your eyes collapses. My wife, Linda, passed away 12 years ago. A car accident on a Tuesday morning. I still remember the weather. Cold, sharp wind, gray sky. I remember the phone call. I remember the hospital hallway. I remember staring at a nurse whose lips were moving, but my mind wasn't letting any meaning through. The weeks after felt like walking underwater. Everything was muffled, slow, heavy. The house grew so quiet, it felt like it had swallowed its own voice. You don't realize how many sounds a person brings into a home until they're gone. The kettle she used every morning, the sound of her slippers dragging when she walked half asleep, the way she hummed at the sink. Even her perfume, sweet, floral, lingered on her sweaters for months, until one day I realized I couldn't smell it anymore. And that broke me all over again. People told me grief gets easier, but for me, it didn't. It just changed shape. It settled in the corners of the house, in the empty spaces of my life. I didn't talk about it, didn't share it. I just tried to survive each day without falling apart. My 3 kids loved their mother more than anything, but they handled losing her in their own ways. My oldest, Michael, threw himself into work and family. He called every week or two, more out of obligation than comfort. I don't blame him. Grief makes you afraid to touch the things that hurt. My daughter, Emily, she tried. God bless her. She really tried. She brought groceries, cleaned, checked on me, but I pushed her away without even realizing it. I thought keeping things to myself was protecting her. Turns out, silence can hurt as much as anything. And then there was Robbie, my youngest, my hurricane child. Losing his mother broke him in ways I didn't understand. He was 22 back then, took up drinking, spent nights out with people who didn't care about him, got fired from 2 jobs, messed up college. He'd come home angry, drunk, blaming the world for everything. And me, I kept trying to fix him, to carry him, to hold all of us together. But you can't save someone who's drowning if you're drowning too. There's always one night that pulls the rug out from under your life. For me, it was in January. Ice on the roads, breath turning white in the air. I was watching TV on mute, couldn't stand the sound of anything back then, when the phone rang. I knew before I picked it up. "Mr. Dawson," the voice said, "we have your son in custody." I remember driving to the station, hands shaking on the wheel. I remember walking in and seeing him sitting on a cold bench, head hanging, knuckles bloody. He looked like a kid pretending to be a man who didn't know how to stop falling apart. On the ride home, I told him, "I can't keep doing this." And he said, "I didn't ask you to." It wasn't the words that broke me. It was the truth in them. I had built my whole identity around saving him, and in the end, neither of us was getting better. He passed out on the couch that night. I stood in the doorway, looking at this grown man who used to beg me to read him stories before bed. I wondered how we became strangers, two ghosts walking around inside the same grief. A week later, Emily came by with muffins and a look that could melt steel. She sat me down and said, "Dad, you need help." I told her I was fine, but she didn't buy it. She told me I wasn't grieving, I was drowning. And for the first time, I let myself admit it. The next day, Michael called. He said I needed to make Robbie move out, said I was killing myself trying to save him. And maybe he was right. Maybe he was wrong. But I wasn't ready to give up on my son. Then Robbie disappeared for 3 days. No call, no text, nothing. Those were the longest 72 hours of my life. I didn't sleep, just paced the hallway, stared out the window, waited for his headlights. When he finally came home, he looked exhausted. Not drunk, not high, just tired of losing. He sat on the steps and whispered, "Dad, I don't know how to fix myself." I sat beside him and said, "Maybe we fix ourselves together." People think healing starts with some grand moment. It doesn't. It starts with one small decision. I made a doctor's appointment, told the truth for the first time in years. She put me on medication and sent me to a counselor. I didn't want to go, but I forced myself. Robbie agreed to rehab. He didn't Thomas anything, didn't swear he'd change. He just said, "I'll try." And that was enough for me. The day I dropped him off, he hugged me. Not the quick, awkward kind we'd been doing, but a real hug. The kind that says, "I still need you. I still love you, even if I'm broken." When he walked inside without looking back, I sat in the car and cried like a man who'd been holding his breath for a decade. Counseling is strange at first. You sit in a room with someone who knows nothing about you, yet somehow sees right through you. One day the counselor asked me, "Fred, what's the thing you wish you could say to your wife?" And without thinking, I whispered, "I'm sorry." "For what?" she asked. "For not being enough after she left." The counselor leaned forward and said, "Fred, you were not failing. You were grieving." And just like that, something in me loosened. I went home and opened an old box of letters Linda had saved. Letters I wrote to her when we first started dating, when we got engaged, when she was pregnant with our first kid. I sat on the living room floor and read every single one. Halfway through, I broke down. But afterwards, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. Healing isn't exciting. It's quiet. It's boring. It's waking up and choosing to try again every day. I started taking walks in the mornings, cooked real meals again, cleaned the house. Not for anyone else, just for myself. I started talking to Michael more deeply, not just surface level, "I'm fine."
great conversations. Emily and I grew closer too. She dragged me to brunch on Fridays, and even though I hated the crowds, I loved the company. The house didn't feel as empty anymore, not because someone moved in, but because I moved back into my own life. When Robbie came home from rehab, he was different. Not cured, but present. He apologized, quietly, honestly. "Dad, I'm sorry for everything." I hugged him and said, "You're home, that's enough." He went to meetings, journaling, therapy, got a job stocking shelves at a grocery store. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. And for the first time, he seemed proud of himself.
That was a bigger miracle than anything I ever prayed for. One Sunday afternoon, all 3 of my kids came over for dinner. No crisis, no emergency, just to be together. We sat around the old dining table, the same one that had been gathering dust for years, and told stories about Linda. Michael talked about how she used to pack embarrassing love notes in his lunchbox. Emily talked about how she taught her to braid hair. Robbie remembered how she'd defend him even when she knew he was guilty. We laughed, real, genuine laughter, the kind that fills a house with warmth. And after they left that night, I stood in the doorway, listening to the quiet. For the first time in 12 years, the quiet didn't hurt. It felt peaceful, safe, like home. People say survival is about strength, but they're wrong. Survival is about honesty, about letting yourself break so you can rebuild. I'm 70 now. My back aches. My hair's thinner than a newborn kitten's. I forget where I put my glasses at least twice a day. But I'm still here, still standing, still healing, still telling my story. And the best part? I'm no longer surviving alone. My kids call more, my granddaughter draws me pictures, Robbie and I sit on the porch some evenings and talk about nothing and everything. Emily brings muffins, Michael visits with his family, and every time we gather, I feel Linda there with us. Not in the sad way, in the way that tells me she'd be proud. I lost my wife, nearly lost my son, thought I lost myself. But life has a funny way of giving you back the pieces you thought were gone forever, if you're brave enough to look for them. So if you're listening to this, if you're hurting, if you're drowning, take it from a 70-year-old man who's seen the darkest nights a family can face. You can survive. You can heal. You can come back to life, one small step at a time. My name is Fred Dawson, and this is the story of how grief nearly broke me, but love stitched me back together.